Get on the train before it leaves the station. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down.
Hello everybody, how you doing? Okay, we're here today, back talking about Michael Funk and the new docudrama that is being made about the story of Michael Funk and Eagle Nation Cycles and everything that happened there. And that is called the $50 Million Bullet. I will be talking here in this video with David Starr, the producer of the $50 Million Bullet. I ask him many questions about this film, about some of the casting of it, many things. So it's very interesting. And folks, I mean, I really think it's important for even those who are interested in making a murder in Stephen Brendan and are afraid to be interested in anything else because of how much it's demanded of you to be interested in Stephen and Brendan. I urge you to please try to take an interest in this stuff, at least somewhat, that I'm showing you. Watch this docudrama when it comes out, because it showcases some of the other areas in Wisconsin, in these rural areas, where some bad apples are getting up to some hijinks, or getting up to something that's just not quite right. That is why I try to talk about some of these things on my channel. It's because they're from right there in Wisconsin. Neenah's an hour away from Manitowoc. You know how I know it's an hour away? It's because I drove it when I was there in Wisconsin. I drove it. It's an hour away. It's in a rural area of Wisconsin. And I think that seam is important and that people should understand that. And that's why it's important, I think, for people to know about these cases like Michael Funk, Michael Bell, and, that sort of stuff. So hopefully a lot of people will end up checking this film out. And he actually explains here that it's actually a docudrama, which is not it won't be a documentary. You won't hear like somebody doing a voiceover. It's going to be like a live action like film or TV show or whatever, where it's just going to be actors portraying the story. And they're just going to act out the story as it unfolded, showing the things that they're researching, finding out, and that sort of stuff. So it's going to be very interesting. So here is my chat with David Starr, the producer of the $50 Million Bullet. Alrighty, hey, how you doing out there, folks? We are here today with David Starr. David Starr of Tickled Films. Some of you may know a documentary that he was producer on called Tickled, which was very interesting. Looked into this strange world of tickle videos and tickle competitions and that sort of thing. A very interesting video. He's here today to talk with us. Obviously, we talked to Dan earlier today, Dan Davies, and this is the producer of the upcoming film $50 Million Bullet, which will be looking into the story of Michael Funk and Eagle Nation Cycles there in Neenah. So welcome, welcome, David. How are you?
Oh, doing pretty good. And I'm coming to you live from Key West, Florida at the moment.
Yeah, it's a very nice place to be.
Yes.
Well, I'm in Southern Cali, so hey, but
Well, I'm bi-coastal. I go back and forth to California consistently.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's pretty nice here. It's actually starting to get really nice. It was like a nice 70 degrees here today, but a little overcast. It was just like, but the sun was still out. And it was beautiful. Anyway, getting off point, So, so I'm very excited, actually, to find that you may have an interest in delving a little deeper and telling a little more of the story with Michael Funk, because I know I've tried as a YouTuber, somebody who has a, interest in criminal justice and the issues that go along with it. I covered this, but I'm very excited to find that, someone like you has taken an interest in it and is going to put, your abilities as a producer and a filmmaker to be able to tell this story so that it will reach a larger audience, and that the story of Michael Funk and Eagle Nation Cycles will reach a larger audience. That is truly what I hope for, and I'm so happy to hear that you're going to be on board.
Well, this story is close to my heart because I attack things head on in movies. Like in Tickled, we attacked essentially cyber stalking.
Right.
And in a movie 27 Matches, we took on the Russian sex trafficking industry.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I'm going to be checking that one out then.
Okay.
Sex trafficking is something that I have a few friends that are into missing kids and missing youth and stuff, and it just turns out oftentimes sex trafficking ends up being involved with that. So it's like, so I it's a disturbing issue, certainly. So I'm going to definitely probably check that out. But yeah.
And then I was sitting at the awards show of the Film Forte in Appleton, Wisconsin, and I happened to be sitting next to the former deputy coroner of that area.
Wow.
She named the county, but I don't remember the name.
Nina?
I believe so.
Yeah.
But she told me of the story, and we got to talking, and right at that moment, I knew in my mind, this story must be told. So
Yeah.
I'm going to tell it.
It's compelling. I mean, I'll tell you what, you know, David, when I got into this, somebody sent me the link to the video where you see Michael being shot out behind Eagle Nation Cycles. And for me, I was like, oh, you know, I mean, part of me was going, oh, wow, one of the hostages is going to get free and not, you know, whatever, and it's going to be, you know, at least a good ending for that guy, right? And then all of a sudden to see what happened, and then, like, it was, for me, what really got it was the number of shots that continued to be fired, and I'm like, what's going on here? And then to hear the excuse for why so many shots were fired. Oh, he was still moving. Well, a body's going to move when you fire a high velocity round into it. So, yeah, so the entire situation just, like, bugged me. It just really rubbed me wrong in so many different ways. So
Well,
I know what you mean.
Do you want me to blow your mind and the mind of your viewers right now?
Sure.
That the police were on the location before the 911 call happened.
I have actually heard something along those lines myself from a person I've talked to. But yeah, that's a very interesting thing. I've also heard that, and there does seem to be some evidence of that, and that's a scary thing.
Yes, because this was not just a hostage running out or anything like that. This was a targeted assassination. They were hoping to get both of them, Steve and ML. The only fact is Steve was on the lower level of the building at the time and was not captured by the gunman.
Right.
But
He was basically hidden down there, right?
Mm-hmm. The gunman had an interaction with the police within 24 hours before, and we are going to be revealing a lot of interesting and shocking facts in this film.
Oh,
and
I love it. That's great. That is absolutely wonderful. I know stuff I've looked into bothers me. I don't know if you've looked into a lot about Hoffer yet, but it bothers me that he was hit in the helmet and then wasn't removed from the situation. To me, that's another troubling wrinkle about this whole situation. You know, why was somebody like that who gets hit like that may have their judgment clouded, and maybe you don't want them on the decision making end of a high powered rifle after they've been hit like that. So there's things like that in this case too that you just wonder where Nina's head was, you know?
Well, don't forget one main fact is that Hoffer was a cop who attempted to plant drugs in the location, Eagle Nation, 3 years prior.
Yes.
His objective failed at that time because there were surveillance cameras running. He didn't know that at the time.
Right. And there's even a missing 20 seconds right before that mysterious tiny little bit of marijuana that's literally the size of the end segment of my pinky finger is how big this piece of marijuana was. It suddenly appeared after the missing 20 seconds of video, which is very interesting. Yes, and it was Hoffer as well. So don't tell me Hoffer wasn't involved. Don't tell me Hoffer, you know what I mean? People, some people try to suggest he wasn't that involved. No, you kidding me? This guy's there at every crucial turn. He's there. He's one of the major players, so yeah. It's bizarre.
Well, that 20 seconds is kind of like the missing Watergate tapes.
Right. It's carefully deleted footage, right? So absolutely. So obviously you were saying you were at a film festival there recently, and somebody was telling you about this story, and so that's how you came to be interested in this, obviously, and decided to make this film, right?
Yes. I like making films that take on intensive subjects. And this is one that is pretty much beyond imagination.
Full of fireworks, for certain.
Full of fireworks and full of inconsistencies and full of twists. And it's definitely a trip down the rabbit hole of corruption. And I would like to say one thing is to all the viewers out there, this is not an anti-cop movie. This is actually an anti-bad cop movie.
You go. That's a good way to put it. I like that. That's a fine distinction. Because here on my channel, I'm not anti-law enforcement either. It turns out that because I'm talking about Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey most of the time, and I'm talking about that whole situation over there, and well, if you spend any time looking into those two cases, you'll find that there's plenty of what the F moments over there. And, so I know what you mean. It's, these rabbit holes as it goes. But that got me into that and got me into the whole criminal justice thing. And I started looking over at Michael Funk when somebody brought it to my attention, because I was like, I don't know. Have you been to Eagle Nation Cycles yet?
Yes, I have.
You have. So have you looked around out front, kind of just the way that the lie of the land, the really nice modern buildings with lots of mirror and very interesting architecture, right? And I mean, for me, it's like, come on, you're telling me that you didn't have an intent here,
Well, in all honesty, I did go into Eagle Nation Cycles. I looked around the interior and exterior, and I will tell you that the story behind that building is part of what inspired the title, The $50 Million Bullet.
Right. That's essentially right. Yeah. It was worth $50 million in certain people's eyes, and it was priceless to Steve and Michael
ML.
So it was priceless to them. They couldn't put a price tag on it, but other people may have been trying to. And the reason, like I say, like you're hinting at, it's like I say, you only got to go down there and walk around and do a little spin in front of Eagle Nation Cycles to realize what's different here, and that's why I say it looks like Nina had a clear intent, with what you see happening around the building where Eagle Nation is. But it's to me it's sad that it somehow was still allowed to get out of hand and still go to the point that it got to. And again, I'm seeing it all over Wisconsin, like in these rural areas up in Wisconsin. It's not just isolated to Neenah or Manitowoc, Sorry, go ahead.
No worries. Yeah, but there is so incredibly much in this story, and this is a classic action adventure police drama that you see that is created by writers constantly in some of the biggest movies out, but this one is real.
Right. And I I understand, that what you mean by that. I mean, obviously it's you got obviously you got some bikers who tend to get a negative connotation just because being bikers or whatever, that sometimes, locals and people will take a negative, assessment or look at that type of lifestyle or whatever. And so it kind of makes it easier for like law enforcement officials and stuff like that to be able to kind of get away with maybe minimizing those people's rights and and maybe trotting on their rights maybe in certain aspects. So I certainly see that aspect.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is kind of sad of the reputation that the bikers have acquired. But when I was there at the Eagle Nation Cycles, I actually got to go and talk to some of them.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are regular people. In fact, there's one guy I really like down there, and I've given him the nickname, the Godfather of Bikers.
Oh, was that... I bet you... I have his business card right here somewhere. Did he give you an obsidian tier?
A what?
Did he give you an obsidian tier?
No.
No?
Mm-mm.
I wonder if it's the same guy. We when I was there, we met lots of people. It was great. Steve made up a big batch of spaghetti. I had a bunch of the people there in the little team of researchers that watched American Murderer 2 and kind of attached themselves to me on my YouTube channel. They call themselves the Wrecking Crew. It's the tie I'm wearing right here, by the way. Anyways, a few of them showed up too, and so we had this nice group. And the people down there are really just cool, down to earth people. They do a lot of cool stuff with kids in the community, where they have like pancake breakfasts on Saturdays with kids and stuff. So, I mean, it's hard for me to see any kind of sinister or anything, whatever, like you probably hope that Neenah law enforcement wanted to paint the picture, but they really are just, really nice people, really wholesome people. And, and I'm just glad the story's going to be told, and that, it's going to be, I eagerly await to see what all you guys come up with, which brings me to a question I wanted to ask you. And that is, have you yet gotten any decision, or are you planning to talk to and reach out, or at least reach out to the law enforcement agencies and maybe even some of the actual law enforcement officers from the case possibly? Will you, are you going to try, or do you actually maybe even have a couple of them in the bag yet?
Well, I will say one thing on that.
Okay.
Is hello, Neenah Police Department. We are open to hearing your side of the story. We don't expect you to come forward, as we have been told that you will unlikely do so. But you can reach me at David Starr at ticklefilms.com should you decide to tell your part of the story and request an interview. Or you may come down, in plain clothes, please, to the event being held on November 18th. I will be glad to discuss it with you, and I will hear your story, and I will give you all fairness, as my reputation shows that I am quite fair in things of this type.
Absolutely. Way to be. It's the way to be. So that's okay. So that's interesting. So you that's essentially what I thought, is that they're going to probably be a lot like Manitowoc, and they're going to close ranks and shut up, right? So, but I hope they do. I hope they do come out and talk to you, though. I really do.
Well,
that seems to be SOP for them. Sorry.
Well, if they do, we'll be there filming it, and we will be releasing it on the behind-the-scenes DVD.
There you go. Right on, right on. Okay, so, so what was it for you when you were being told this story? What part of this really got to you and just nailed you finally, and just to where you were compelled by it?
The timeline. How can the police be there for an event, an action, that hasn't even come in on 911 yet.
Right. Okay. Okay. As you opened up with. Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. It is a good one.
Yep. And
Yeah.
the subsequent commentary that we learned that the officer Hoffer was actually on family leave during that time. But who knows?
Right.
He may have dropped the bad guy right at the front door.
Yeah. Right. He was on leave. That is a
Officer
very
Hoffer.
interesting bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always manages to
Officer
be
Hoffer,
involved. Sorry, go ahead.
Officer Hoffer, no worries. Officer Hoffer, if you oppose that position or wish to make a statement in regards to that, please come forward.
Yes. Please do. I told Dan, I was like, I really hope Hoffer gets in front of one of your guys' cameras. So.
I do too, but don't hold your breath.
Yeah, I know. I know how it goes, man. You're preaching the choir here. I've been dealing with these rural Manitowoc County Sheriff's Departments for 3 years now, so I'm going on 4. 3.5 going on 4. So
About the age of this story from
right,
from
yes. I
2012.
just didn't realize it as I was getting into Avery Dassey that the Michael Funk thing was going on, but about 2 years ago, Mr. Moderson made sure I was aware of it, and as soon as I watched the video, I was like, oh, no way. I don't like this at all. There's something definitely wrong here, and that is, so. Anyways, I was going to ask next thing. Dan was a great guy. It was great talking to him. So I wanted to ask you, how, what was it that you, about Dan, or what brought you to decide, Dan would be good for playing Michael Funk?
Okay, first I got to see a wide spectrum of Dan on film in his TV show Hood, which is a great show, by the way, and a movie called Anger. It gave us a chance to view his wide spectrum of abilities, and then after that, I learned that he had actually lived the Michael Funk story.
Right.
He knows a lot of the people who were involved and everything. And Michael, in this instance, Dan won't be just playing Michael Funk ML. He is Michael Funk ML.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I like, I got that from him too, listening to him talk about, growing up there and him and his dad living there in the 60s and stuff. So I think he's absolutely phenomenal. Have you considered anybody for Flat Off yet, or is more casting to come in the future?
There is more casting to come. Last night, I can give you a preempt that we have cast the role of Officer Hoffer, because we already know he's not going to show.
Right.
We're trying to use as many real people as possible in the film, and we have several who have accepted it. Officer Hoffer not being one of them.
Right.
Officer Hoffer is going to be played by a former LAPD SWAT commander who has been on the force for over 20 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so we're getting the real thing. Okay, now addressing Flodoff. He is a unique and bizarre character.
Certainly.
It is not going to be as easy to cast him, but rest assured, we will find exactly the right person who will send chills through your mind as you sit there in the theater and watch him portray his acts of terror.
Yeah. And also a little bit of pity, right? Guy is somewhat pitiable.
Yeah, because we have reason to believe that this event was orchestrated, and we'll be presenting that in detail in the film. Flathoff was probably a pawn.
Yeah.
A crazy pawn who they knew how he would react, and they wired him up to react in that fashion, gave him all the ammunition that he needed.
Right. Yeah.
and sent them in there to do their dirty work.
Yeah. Well, and what got him there was a bike, and that bike, yeah, and you look at the whole things of this case, it's an interesting one, but yeah,
Ke-
definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Keep in mind that the bike you're talking about is the green bike. It was brought in there for repairs by the new bike's owner.
Mr. Bell.
Flathoff sold, right. He sold the bike in order to get bail money.
Bail money, right?
So that means he had direct contact with the police on a consistent basis.
Yeah, yes, he did.
And who said that a bad cop did not tell him, "Hey, your bike's over here"?
Right. Well, you know what? That's absolutely true. That's fair point.
Yep. Granted, I'm giving you a lot of interesting tidbits of the story,
Yes.
but
People on my
it,
channel will have heard some of these before, and some of the things you're saying are
uh,
very interesting. I'll say
mhm.
that.
there, there is some things that haven't been commonly released, and
Right.
those will be shown in the movie, and they will send chills down the spine of most law-abiding Americans.
There we go. There we go. And I hope it's groundbreaking, and I'm hoping it calls a hell of a lot of attention to this for many reasons, to be honest. But that sounds great. That obviously, that is something to look forward to. So.
Thank you.
So
Yes, it is.
So let me ask you then. Look, where are you looking with the documentary here? Where are you looking to start? What part? How much of this story are you
Well,
focusing on? Like, where are you looking to focus on?
okay, okay, I can give you a brief summary because a lot of this part is the public info. But
Okay.
I want to clarify on one part. It is actually a docudrama
Sorry,
rather than a
docudrama.
documentary.
Okay,
Yeah, because
docudrama. Okay.
right, because we won't be having the guys off on the side of the camera or the side of the screen describing the events or anything like that. This is a real police action movie.
Right. Okay.
Just a true, it's just a true story.
Right.
Okay, but where we're going to start is we're going to open up with the official version of the shooting. That will take only a couple of minutes. And then we're going to, on the screen, it is going to say 3 years earlier. And we're going to develop the story from there, all the way from the drug planting and the
Right.
subsequent events that took place after that not everybody knows. And
Right.
then it's going to end on the official shooting. It's going to end on the true version and complete version of the shooting. And we also have obtained the body cam footage of what actually happened at that event.
Right.
And that body cam footage is actually going to be playing right alongside with some of the newscast as the credits are rolling. So please,
Right.
everybody, stay after the movie.
There you go. Right on. That sounds awesome. Right on. Right on. Sounds like you're going to be hitting hard, so that's absolutely fantastic. So I guess another thing I wanted to ask you about was, your interest in criminal justice or criminal justice reform. I don't know if you have one very much. I do notice that in Tickled, for me, there was a criminal justice issue raised
Yes.
with the fact that D'Amato basically got off with nothing.
That
A couple charges that, like he did
that
what, some time for? A couple
Yep.
years, maybe?
No, he did 6 months. You've heard of diplomatic immunity, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay. There's also something called financial immunity. He had a lot of money, and that is what bought him
So he
his
was able to buy justice.
scenario.
See,
Mm-hmm. So
See, I may
he
want to
bought
circle
himself
back on
some justice.
Tickled now because I may want to spotlight on that issue there. But anyway, that bothered me. I was like, wait, this guy was doing identity fraud, stealing dead people's social security numbers, and that's
Well,
it. The
well,
FBI didn't
Well, one thing I can tell you, sitting here right now, there is enough information for a Tickled 2
Oh,
trip further down the rabbit hole.
there you go.
Subsequently, as after Tickled, I was contacted by people who have actually lived with who have been called the Tickle King. There's another player out there who was not revealed in Tickled,
Oh,
the first Tickled. There is more to the story.
oh wow. Another faction. That's great. I eagerly await that because, like I said, your first one there raised a criminal justice issue for me, um, and it's disturbing what people are kind of able to get away with, kind of being on, through the web, through the internet, and the things that it's hard to believe they were able to convince this many grown, teenage boys, tweens or 20-year-olds that were willing to go do that. I mean, for
Well,
me, I mean that was, but then again, it was a big payday, right? They gave you like $3,000 to go down and get tickled, right, for a couple
there you go.
hours, right?
Yeah, and actually,
Just
there's
yeah,
nothing
so
nothing
bizarre.
wrong with nothing wrong with that part though, because as you know, the Japanese they like the strange and the unusual. So the
Yes,
market was viable. The problem is the stalking.
the way that D'Amato was doing it, right?
There you go.
Because you guys even showed in that documentary, you guys went down to, funny, you happen to be in Florida. Then you go down and visit some guy in Florida who actually made his living off of making tickle videos, tickle fetish
And
videos.
that is correct. That's Richard Ivy, a real nice guy, and he is honorable.
Yeah,
And
he
we
was, yeah.
yeah, we wanted to show a legitimate application of it as opposed to it's not just a horror show. Diamato is the horror show.
Yeah, that was, yeah, wild. I felt bad for the kid that was,
Uh,
aspiring athlete, and he was trying out for all these teams and kept getting you're the best guy out there, but we really don't want to deal with the PR nightmare that is your life right now. So we're just going to go with that guy. That must have been so frustrating for that kid where he's just like, oh, wow, one night I chose to take $3,000 to get tickled, and now I can't even live my dream. you know?
actually, that happened to a couple of actors as well in that similar scenario.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Who subsequently reached out to me to tell me their horror story.
Oh, wow. That's wild. Yeah, but I'm glad that, you realized when they were attacking what you referred to as the talent that you were like, nope, this is crossing every gosh darn line. You know what it was one thing when it was all just, agreement and you were following the agreement. But I just like the stance you took when they started publicly posting that stuff and smearing those kids. I mean, that was horrible. So it was great to see you stand up for what was right.
Yep.
So,
I took them head on. I started that expose campaign in 2016. I was sued back then as well, for coincidentally the same amount, 20 million, and then they didn't get anywhere on that. So they even tried going to a state court of California, Superior Court, and tried to sue for just 25,000 and try to get an injunction on me. But the fact is, on all defamation cases, the truth is a valid defense.
right. Oh, that's funny.
And boy, did I give them the truth.
Sure, absolutely, and you would know it better than most,
Yep.
being who you
Yep.
were. So,
Hmm.
right.
And
Wow.
each little thing that they did to them, I turned up the screws even tighter.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's wild.
and hmm and then naturally with Tickled, they sued me again, along
Right.
with the producer and the production company, and pretty much of everyone that they could name, I guess.
Yeah, that's funny. Oh
But
wow. So,
I was the only actor in the movie sued though.
oh right. Is it still going, or did it fizzle out, or?
Oh, it's gone.
It's
It's gone.
got dismissed.
Yeah. That was back in 2016. They actually had the nerve to serve our director on a time when he was just walking out and about.
Oh wow.
They uh, they swooped in like a bed bug.
Oh jeez, that's wild. That's pretty crazy. It's I mean, it is funny watching Tickled. I mean, the at first I was like, like, okay, this is just bizarre. It's whatever. To each their own. If people like tickling each other, whatever, right? I was just like, but then he started. For me, it was like when he started getting the people flying over from the United States that were just like completely disturbed about him. That New Zealand reporter looking into it. I'm sorry, what was his name?
David Ferrier.
David Ferrier. Him
Mm-hmm.
looking, and he was looking into this thing, and they got so shaken up just because he was like noticing how bizarre it was. And then
Mm-hmm.
once you saw that reaction, it was like, whoa. And then it got like worse and worse, you know what I mean? And it was just like to see you suddenly were like, oh wow, there's a kind of a dark underbelly here, of this situation. And it was actually good thing he decided to look into it, because I could tell at the beginning of the movie he was like on the fence, like, I don't know, is there anything here? I don't know if I wanted to go ahead and continue to waste resources on it. But then as soon as those people showed up, he was like, that's it, I'm all in. We're going to the U.S.
Yep,
So
exactly.
that was brilliant. That was awesome. So
Tickled has built up its own little subculture and interesting fan base. Actually, in the UK right now,
yeah.
hello, my friends in the UK, there is a Tickle the musical, which
Oh
is
wow.
actually loosely based as a prequel to the documentary. It's
Oh.
inspired by Tickled, but it's more of the time of when the actual competitive endurance tickling games were being played.
Ah.
It's very, it's funny.
I think I'm gonna see if I can get my friend, my friend, the Scott, Mr. Capaldi, to maybe go check out one of those and get him to report back on it.
Oh, absolutely.
You said it's over in the UK, right?
It's in the UK. It's playing at London in London. I believe the place is called King's Head Theatre, but I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that one.
All right. You
But
heard him.
Richard
You
Lang,
heard him, Mr. Capaldi. You heard him. All right. I want to hear all about it. No, so Paul Capaldi is my buddy. He's got a YouTube channel as well, who also reports on the Avery Dassey cases along with me. So that's who he is. That's and he happens to be from Scotland, and so that's why I figured he might be able to. Also, Jane Sharp might be able to go check that out. I would actually be interested to hear about that. So if anybody is there in the UK, in London, and want to go check that thing out, I would be very interested to hear about it. So I'll even bring you on live so you can talk to everybody about it. So, all right. so, all right. So, what are you ultimately hoping? Like your ultimate goal in making this film. What are you hoping that the viewer walks away with?
the viewer will walk away with, how did this happen? It really happened. In fact,
Right.
to give you a bit of what is that is one of the scenes in the tail portion of the movie is a reporter talking to Steve, and he said, they got away with murder, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Fade to black.
Right. It's a good way. It's a good way. And it's like I said, you're right on the money, because there is something about these rural areas in Wisconsin, these law enforcement agencies, and even the DAs and the district attorneys and stuff. There's just like this unspoken kind of rule, where they all back each other up, they all cover each other's butt. We've seen it in the Avery Dassey cases. I don't know how much you've looked into that, or if you've seen Making a Murderer, but we've seen it there. I see it with this Michael Funk case, where it's pretty clear Nina wanted that building. And they were, by that raid, what they were doing with that raid, it looks pretty obvious they were trying to get it by any means possible.
Civil forfeiture.
Right. Yeah. It seems like they were trying to do that. And so, and then you look over at the Michael Bell case, which is also nearby. Michael Bell, his son was actually shot and killed by the police in his own driveway. And, the kid was unarmed and all those things. And so, and these police, they got caught covering it up. And then they had to change their stories because they got caught lying. And it was just like, it was bizarre. And then one of them ended up committing suicide, one of the officers, because the whole thing was becoming such a huge problem, and his guilt, I guess, was really starting to eat him up. And one of them ended up committing suicide. To me, that's how committed they are to not telling the truth and covering up for one another, that they will watch one of their own commit suicide and still hold that line. It's, to me, fascinating but disturbing at the same time. So, yeah, that's just something that's, maybe I'm just been colored by following these things in Wisconsin for 3.5 years now. But yeah, it's pretty wild what they get away with there. So I guess I was...
Until now.
Hopefully, yes, exactly. I hope we call a whole bunch of attention to this, because it does bother me what happened there. I mean, when you think about it, if you're ever in a hostage situation, right, you want to think that if you somehow got out of there, that you weren't going to get trampled by the cavalry, right? You want to think that if you get out of the frying pan, that you're not going to end up in the fire, right?
That is absolutely correct, and under most conditions, that would happen. But
Right.
let me tell you, they had a complete description of what Flathoff was wearing, etc. And Eagle Nation guys wear the very same T-shirts. It's like when you're going into an auto place. It's what they wear.
Similar to the one
So
I was wearing with Dan this morning, folks. Similar to that one.
There you go. And a special limited edition of that shirt will be coming out for this movie.
Awesome. I gotta get one of those. I want to get it signed by Dan Davies and the guy who plays Flathoff and the guy who plays Hoffer. Anyway.
There you go.
So
I'll make that happen. I'll make that happen for you.
Right on. Thanks. That'll be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be very happy for that. That was one of the things that we were when we were there. They gave us a shirt. They gave my friend Dawn, who was there with me, a shirt. They gave my friend Linda and her friend who were there with us a shirt. And everybody was so proud of those shirts when we're heading over to the Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey rally, and these guys are still all just so proud of their Eagle Nation shirts and everything. It was so funny, but so there's a lot of interest, I hope, and I'm hoping that we create more. I'm just hoping that we bring more people's eyes to this, because that's why I was so excited to hear that you were going to pick it up and tell this story, and in more detail and in a cinematic way that I just can't do here in my little studio, my little YouTube studio. So I'm very excited for that. So thank you for coming on to tell Michael's story, because it's tragic, and I'm hoping
Absolutely.
And
it's a story that needed to be told.
Yeah, a story that needed to be told. That's the way I feel about it. Have you heard about the Michael Bell stuff yet, by chance?
No, I have no idea what that is.
Ah,
What is it?
Well, it's just another case there in Wisconsin. I don't know if it was Nina or if it was, I think it was somewhere else, just nearby Nina. And like I said, Michael Bell and his son Michael, also his son's name was Michael. Michael pulled up to the house. He was parked in front. You just see video of cops driving up, and they drive up to this parked car.
Mm-hmm.
And as they stop behind this car, the kid just kind of gets out, and he's just kind of walking up the driveway. And all of a sudden, the cops are like rushing at him, and he looks and he like gets startled, and so they're tackling him and They pin him up against the car. Ultimately, the kid ends up being shot by one of the officers.
What was
And
the reason for the call?
they there is no reason. It's like that's one of the things we all speculate about because we don't know. The way the video opens, it's just some officers in a vehicle driving up to this parked vehicle because the kid was just parked on the side of the road in front of his dad's house.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess he was getting ready to get out and go in, but there's no real explanation as to what's going on. They just pull up and start, trying to arrest him, I guess is what they're saying. So
And he had no warrants or anything like that.
He'd been having some run-ins with the law because of there was something recently he had been drunk at a restaurant or an outing recently where he had caused a bit of a ruckus, I guess, being a little drunk or something.
So
it was something like that.
So what you're telling me is they in what city is that again? What city?
I'm not sure if it was Nina or if it was no, it's a different one. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head now.
Okay, but
it's somewhere there in rural Wisconsin.
Okay, so you're telling me in rural Wisconsin, disturbing the peace carries the death penalty.
It's kind of, sort of. For whatever reason, they did this. Now, there was, as they were wrestling with him, one of the cops got his gun that was in his holster, got caught on the side view mirror of the car. And so he claims that he thought the kid was going for his gun and that's why the other officer ended up shooting the kid, whatever. But what's happened is Michael's father, the kid's father, ended up winning a settlement and getting some money, and he used that money to kind of help push some legislation through in Wisconsin. And that is why now no longer are law enforcement agencies allowed to investigate themselves when there's an officer involved shooting. From now on, when there's an officer involved shooting, another agency has to come in to conduct the investigation. That's what Michael Bell got initiated. So
that is a good law overall, but admittedly I have heard the story of the Wisconsin Department of Justice basically rubber stamps every version of police shootings.
Right. And that will bring me to what I was going to tell you next, is that Brad Schimmel, who you may end up reading an email that he exchanged with Kay at one point. And let me tell you, he was somewhat kind of involved with this, and I'll tell you what, it's a email where he's trying to appear to have sympathy for Eagle Nation and all that stuff, but it just comes off as disingenuous to me, and Kay too. She feels it's very disingenuous as well. But that's Brad Schimmel. He was the Attorney General at the time that this was all going down. I have bones to pick with him with the Brendan Dassey case, and but he also is slightly involved in the Eagle Nation case, and he's also the one that refused to give Michael Bell Sr. the investigation he wanted. He wanted the legislation that he got passed to work retroactively, and he wanted Brad Schimmel to initiate an investigation to figure out what happened to his son. And Brad Schimmel said, "No, I'm sorry, it doesn't apply to the cases that are old like that or whatever," and basically just gave him the shaft. After getting all that legislation pushed through, Schimmel just basically was like, "Yeah, you don't get that."
Well, no, granted, I understand from a legal perspective, that would be an ex post facto law, which would mean to apply an act in the future. You can't apply that law towards the past as a constitutional provision, actually.
Yeah. So that's
but intellectually, they should have gone forward with the investigation in order to solve unanswered questions. And they didn't need the law, and they did not need that law in order to do the investigation.
Oh, that's true. But when you learn how it goes in Wisconsin with these rural areas in Wisconsin, you'll find out it's just par for the course.
Well, I will admit I'm learning a lot more about Wisconsin than I do last week.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's the way I
Although
was.
I,
That's the way I
although I
was 3
love,
years ago.
although I love the people there, the people
Oh,
themselves, the citizenry, are a bunch of sweethearts.
absolutely.
And I have actually had one encounter with a law enforcement officer there. It was not in Neenah or any of the cities that
Right.
we're discussing for this movie. And he was entirely regular and respectful. So I will say that there are some good
Yeah.
Wisconsin cops too. Like I said, this is not an anti-cop movie. It's an
Right.
anti-bad cop movie. In fact, someone submitted a song to us that we were not going to use because it says, "This is what happens when you call the cops." It portrays the cops in a bad way, as everything always happens negatively. No,
Yeah.
they're out there. The good ones are out there saving your lives. And the good cop who I'm bringing in to play Officer Hopper, what a change of character. Good cop to bad cop. He is a good cop. I interviewed him extensively and learned some of his stories, and I'm certain that he has saved lives. And in this way, he and all the others who are participating in the $50 million bullet are trying to save lives. And it will happen. When you shine the light of truth on something, lies, the darkness fade away.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's great. That's great. I'm eager to see your good cop that's playing Hoffer. It is a bit of an enigma to say the least, I guess.
Well, he reminds me of Dirty Harry.
Does he? Hey, I think it's cool he's from L.A. Anyway. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, let's see.
Well, I guess that's how he got into the movies.
Yeah, right. He so I guess let's see. It's obviously going to be a story of, where it's going to be like you're saying, live action,
Mm-hmm.
and telling the story just by showing, almost like watching a TV show, but it's
Yeah,
true.
it is true, and it will be more intense than most TV shows, but I'm certain that it will be runnable with appropriate editing.
About how long do you intend, or I don't know, suspect, or maybe think it might be?
Length of the film?
Yeah, the length of
Well, actually, I had a discussion about that actually a few days ago, and I'm projecting 1 hour and 50 minutes.
1 hour and 50
Finish.
minutes.
Yep. Give the moviegoer their worth for their ticket.
Right. Right on. Okay, so that'll probably cover some good ground. I'm actually very intrigued to see this. Very, very intrigued. Especially seeing as I'm used to watching documentaries and things. Like, I don't know, like I guess have you seen the When They See Us, about the Central Park 5? Have you seen that?
No.
It came out recently. I mean, I would consider it a docudrama, but it didn't have a whole lot of action. You know what I mean? It was just kids that were getting railroaded and thrown into prison. But this one might be a little different because you're going to have a real live action situation. At one point at least. Well, a couple actually. I mean, the raid's pretty intense as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting to say the least, though. But
we're also going to have
it's interesting to see this docudrama to soak that in that new, added genre or subgenre, I guess you might say.
Well, one thing I can say on this film is it has received absolutely wonderful, tremendous support. In the real world, ML had a ride of honor. There's a place where bikers get a brick implanted, and there were bikes who rode up there. And I described with our guy that we should do that, and he he asked how many bikes would I like, and I said, oh, about 100 or so. He said, how would you like about 800 to 1,000?
Right on, right on. So
There is
that's
real
cool.
love. There's real love for this guy out there. He did a lot of good things in the community.
Yeah,
He even held blood drives.
yeah. Oh, everybody I talked to about Michael has nothing but good things to say about him. How he was a helpful, just you could talk to him. People always, these are the things that people say about him. He was very obviously well loved, and that's what makes this situation even more tragic than it already is. And
Hmm.
is to see how well loved he was, and still
Exactly.
is.
Yep. And actually, we have a famous rock band who's actually composing a song directly for this film,
Oh, that's cool.
the $50 million bullet that cut ML down.
Right. Oh, that sounds great. Can't wait to see that as well. And we're into the multimedia over here too. We have a songwriter that for Stephen and Brendan. His name's Stacy Seabrook, and he writes some very very touching and thought provoking songs about the Avery Dassey cases. So I do love that facet. So I'm eager to see what your rock band comes up with. That should be cool. That is gonna be awesome. So. That's all the questions I have. Is there anything in particular that you wanted to let people know about while we're here?
Yes, please be sure to visit the film's official website at the $50 million bullet, and that 50 is spelled out FIFTY.
Right.
Be sure to visit that, and then you can keep in the loop of all the progress of what will be going on in the movie. And we're also actually accepting actor submissions. Like I said, Flat Off is a hard guy to find. If
There
you
you
think you
go.
can do Flat Off, drop us a letter.
There you go. There you go, folks. That's. I'm gonna put that link along with some other links or whatever down below, folks. Obviously, remember November 18th if you want to go out to Eagle Nation Cycles, where you can meet Mr. Starr. You can also meet Mr. Davies, the actor who'll be playing Michael Funk. You can go out there. It's gonna be the press day, so you can go out there and find out more about this, or hopefully maybe get involved in. Hey, if you got that
And all,
grungy, Russell. What's the guy from? I forget his name. Russell. What's his name? I don't know. Anyway, if you got that real grungy look, man, that's Flat Off. So.
okay. Also, I'd like to throw in there, we have received tremendous response to our event. So if it is changed to any other venue that is larger, that information will be posted on our website.
Okay, and if that happens, folks, I will let you know as well. So, but thank you for being here. It's been very interesting, and I'm eagerly awaiting to see what you eventually come up with and for all of us. Very eager.
Thank you very much, and it will be well worth the wait.
Right on.
Our target release date at this point is early December, because that's actually when the event happened.
Early December.
Yep.
Wow.
Early
Okay.
December.
That's not a very long wait, folks. That's
It's not this year. Not this year, my
next
friend.
year.
This is,
Early next
yeah,
year.
this is,
Okay. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Early
this
December
is what,
next year.
yeah, this is 20. Right there, you
Yep,
go.
there we go. Just gotta get it all straight. I was gonna say that's only a couple months. That's pretty quick. No. So yeah, all right. So about a year and 2 months, folks. That's not too bad.
Yep.
That's not too bad at all.
Hmm.
So, and obviously, Dan indicated that you guys may throw me, something to show people over here to continue to stoke the interest. Obviously, if there's something you guys want to tease or something, feel free to, toss something over here and I can tease it for you and stuff like that.
Yeah, be sure to stay tuned to his channel, because we will be feeding him some exclusive stuff.
Alrighty, love it. Okay, everybody, that has been my talk here with David Starr, producer at Tickled Films. If you haven't, go check out the film Tickled. I'm going to be going and checking out the 27, what did you say, 27?
27 matches.
27 matches, yes. I got to go check that
Mhm.
one out because, like I said, the sex trafficking thing is another bothersome issue that bugs me. So I'm intrigued to see what you did there. Everybody check them out. I'm eagerly, hopefully you are all eagerly awaiting this thing like I am. Like I said, this is what helps to highlight the situation that we're all calling attention to there in Manitowoc with Avery Dassey or wherever, by showing that there are some bad apples in the system there, in that area, in the rural areas, that we just need that to be acknowledged. And that's what things like this help do. And they show that it's not just one area, but there's maybe a little bit of a problem with some bad apples that are rotting the barrel. So that's why I think it's important to know about what happened at Eagle Nation Cycles. So thank you for being here, David, and thank you for what you're doing.
And thank you for having me on your show.
Okay, so that was my chat with David Starr, producer of the $50 Million Bullet, which is going to focus on the Michael Funk Eagle Nation cycle story from about 2015 to 2016 basically, and I think it's going to be phenomenal. And you heard what he said, that he's going to be able to show that police were at Eagle Nations prior to a 911 call coming in, that somehow they were already ready, getting ready. And remember, Hoffer was on leave when this all went down. Yet he got there so quick to be part of that hasty team. So he had a lot of interesting things to say. I'm very excited about this docudrama, this film that's going to be coming out that he's making. I hope a lot of people see it. I hope a lot of people appreciate it. That it's important that we at least set up certain guidelines so that we don't have guys like Hoffer remaining involved in situations where they clearly shouldn't be, right? So that's one of the main takeaways for me. So obviously, everybody, there's going to be obviously some content they're going to be giving me to go ahead and put here on the channel to tease and show everybody some little snippets maybe of what's going on with the movie. So you heard him say that, so you can expect some exclusive stuff like that here on my channel. So be looking for that. I'm really excited about this film. I hope you guys are too. This is another thing that showcases the bad apples there in the rural Wisconsin law enforcement and district attorney's offices, and I think it's important that we all pay attention to it and share it as intensely as we would if it was Stephen and Brendan. Anyway, all right. That's about it for this one, folks. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.